Genesis chapter 21 through 7. What were some of the things that went on last week?
Well, Abraham lied again.
Yeah, he lied again.
Same lie.
Same lie, yeah. Yeah. Same situation. What was it?
Abimelech took Sarah and they had Sarah.
Yeah. So we had Pharaoh for the first time, and this time we have Abimelech, the Philistines. So you have the Egyptians, now you have the Philistines. What else? Anything else?
Well, God protected Sarah during that time so that she wasn't, touched or affected in a wrong manner. She's not coming to him in a dream, Abimelech in a dream.
Yeah. So the way that God warns Abimelech is through the dream. He comes to him, but there's something else as well. There's something else where he recognizes there's something wrong. Now he directly knows because he got this revelation from God, this dream from God. But what else is going on with Abimelech and his household that kind of clues him in that something's wrong? Anybody know?
Go to 17. Nobody can have any kids.
Yeah, the kids, the wombs are all shut. Let's do this. Let's read the whole text. Look at the verse here, and we'll just kind of press on here. Starting in verse 1. From there, Abraham journeyed towards the territory of the Negev. What's the Negev? I told you last week. It's just
Not far away. Or
south.
over there.
South. It's the word south. It's just the word south. Traveled towards the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. Why does he take her?
He wanted another woman.
Yeah. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. Now she's an old lady.
Is she still 100?
She's not 100 yet, no. No, but she's an old lady. And she's beautiful. So she is beautiful even into her older age. And so he's going to have another woman and his another wife, another concubine or something along those lines. But God, you'll read that a lot of times, won't you? But God. Something's going on, something's wrong, and then but God. God steps in and something's going to change. So, but God, verse 3, came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Now, Abimelech had not approached her, so her purity is kept intact, right? She hasn't been with him. He's kept. Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, "Lord, will you kill an innocent people?"
Well, the only thing he's innocent of is he hasn't been with Sarah yet.
Well, that's the problem, right? Will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, "She is my sister"? And she herself said, "He is my brother." In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this. And God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart. And it was I who kept you from sinning against me." Who was the one that kept Abimelech from sinning against? God did.
And Abimelech's acting like he's such a...
Yeah, right. God says, I'm the one who intervened, really, right? I intervened.
But if he doesn't know he's doing wrong,
Yeah.
is it really that bad?
Well, it's bad.
Right, but let's say somebody gives you something
Yeah.
and you take it, but it was stolen, therefore you halfway stole it, but you didn't know it was stolen. You're kind of like an accomplice of that stolen item.
Right.
You didn't halfway steal it. You received stolen
Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's
It's a
still,
whole nother.
okay, it's an offense, but you didn't know it, so is
Yeah,
it
he's
wrong on your
innocent.
part?
He's innocent.
Okay.
He is innocent.
Okay.
God recognizes that. But God is saying, you're innocent because I kept you from doing this. So he is innocent. But God says, I'm the one that kept you from sinning. He would have. He brings this woman into his harem for a purpose. He's
He
gonna.
would have sinned unknowingly, though, correct?
Well, he would have sinned unknowingly, but it still would have been horrific. Why would it have been horrific?
Because it was a
She
man's
was
wife.
Abraham's.
Well, it's a man's wife, but there's something bigger than that.
God had a plan.
The lineage.
Yeah, God had a plan that through Abraham and Sarah.
would come into the
Yeah.
to save the world.
Yeah, who's going to come to save the world, right? It's through this. So yeah, this would have been a big deal. This would have been a problem. So God keeps him from sinning. And again, he's innocent. Therefore, I did not let you touch her, God says. Verse 7. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet. So that he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called his servants and told them all these things, and the men were very much afraid. Let's stop there for the moment. So what does God say in verse 7? What's he say to Abimelech?
Well, there, I'll kill all.
Yeah, return the woman, or all these people are going to be.
You will die and all
Yeah.
that are yours.
Yeah, that's right. God is going to bring about some judgment. That's right. But he says something else too.
Identified Abraham as a prophet.
That's right. He identifies Abraham as a prophet. And he says that he is going to do what for Abimelech?
Right.
He's going to pray. What does this tell us about Abraham?
A forgiving man.
He's still a
That
righteous-
Abraham is?
He had bronze ears.
He's still a righteous man.
Yeah, there's something special about Abraham.
He's a
Something
major
special.
intercessor
From the
for
beginning,
sure.
we've heard about him. He's special in God's eye.
Yes, he's special. There's a specialness that goes on. And what'd you say, Mike?
Well, he's really an intercessor. He saved Sodom. He's pleaded for Sodom, and now, he's going to be pleading for another country for Abimelech. It
Right.
seems like, and then in the parable of hell, it's like they had some sense there that go to Father Abraham, and he said they have the prophets,
Right.
Like there was something about Abraham in that parable that was very redemptive, just
Yeah, there's something special. Absolutely. Something special about Abraham. So what's special about him?
He's chosen by God.
He's chosen by God.
Lineage of Jesus.
He's definitely in the lineage of Jesus. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of Amalek, wasn't it a sin to have a harem?
To have many wives?
Yeah.
Well, no.
No?
No.
God winked at it. I don't say that lightly.
David had many wives. Solomon had many wives. Many biblical patriarchs had many wives. Abraham will have.
Well, thank God
Jacob.
it's a sin now.
It's
Well, Jacob had 4.
yeah. It's not the way God planned it. Jesus said. He said from the beginning it was meant to be one man and one woman for life. But during this period of time, as Mike said, some translations say God winked at. God didn't hold certain things. He's working with humanity. There's certain things he needs to get through. There's certain things he's not going to, in a sense, be too concerned about at the moment. So, no. Even though we want to say yes. That's not really the big issue here with Abimelech, and we don't really know. But the reason that Abraham is special is because he's in a covenant with God. See, there's nothing special about Abraham in and of himself. Is there?
But Abimelech finds himself in this mess because Abraham lied to him.
Yes. No, you're correct. And who else lies to him?
Sarah.
Sarah does too.
Did she or did
She
he
did.
did Abraham tell him?
They both.
Sarah?
It said that she said he's my brother.
That's right. So she lies too. Now, Abraham asks her to lie, but she lies. She lies absolutely as well. So they're both sinning in the fact that they are lying. But the reason Abraham is special is because he's in a covenant relationship with God. That's what makes him special, right? It's not because Abraham in and of himself is somebody special. In fact, we look at him, he doesn't seem to be the greatest, hero of faith that he's talked about later on. We see a lot of the blemishes, that kind of
Even
stuff.
the special people that we read about in the Bible
Yeah.
have flaws.
Yeah, and the Bible doesn't hide it.
Right.
That's right. And we talked about this in the sermon a couple weeks back, the concept of wavering faith. We see there's periods of time in Abraham's life where he's really a great man of faith. He's just real faithful to God. He leaves his country. He leaves his father's household. He leaves all that behind. He follows God. Faithful to God. And then there's times in his life where he wavers, where he fails at times, where he sins against God. And this is one of those events. But the point that we want to get to is the reason Abraham is special or unique is because he's in a covenant relationship with God. Now, did God promise to bless Abraham? Yes. Was there any conditions initially upon God blessing Abraham?
Forgive Amalek.
No, originally when God gets into a covenant with him
Oh,
in chapter 12. Was there any conditions upon Abraham that he must keep in order for God to bless him? That comes later. Prior to that, there's really nothing other than follow God. Right? He says, follow me, but it's not a covenant of blessing and cursing. It's not, if you do this, I will do this, and if you do that, I will do that. That's what we get with Israel later on, right? Israel has a covenant of blessing and cursing. God says, if you're faithful to me, if you continue to keep my commandments, if you do right, if you do this, I'll bless you. The land will flow. Your children will be bountiful. You'll have all kinds of harvests and crops and all that kind of stuff. But if you sin against me, if you go after false idols, if you do this, if you don't obey my commandments, then you won't have children. The land won't produce, and eventually you'll be kicked out of the land. We talked about this early on when we were in chapter 12 of Genesis, that God makes an unconditional covenant with Abraham. There aren't any requirements on his part. God just says, follow me and I'm going to make you a great man. Come out of your family's household and all of that kind of stuff. But he doesn't say, make sure you don't lie, steal, cheat. He doesn't do any of that stuff. It's, in a very real way, it's an unconditional covenant. Later on, there's the covenant of circumcision. That comes in 17. And even that really isn't much of a requirement other than saying, on the 8th day, every child that's born in your household needs to be circumcised. So all the males need to be circumcised. But yeah, there's no covenant expectations initially on his part. So when he fails, and he failed in Egypt, he fails here, it's not as if God is going to revoke the promise and take that away and say, you blew it. You blew it. Let's read. No, go ahead. You got something to say? Go for it.
But Abraham hadn't really lied about what she
Let's read the text and we'll talk about that.
But it was a lie because it was a misconception of
Was a half
information.
Let's read the text because he's going to tell us. So let's read the text and then we'll talk about it. So somebody read verses 8 through 18.
So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us, and how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, I did it because I thought there is no fear of God in all this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, this is the kindness you must do to me at every place to which we come. Say to me, he is my brother. Is that how far you wanted me to go? Or?
No, keep reading. Read to the end.
And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah, his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
Okay, so Abimelech does what in starting in verses 8 through 13? What is?
Well, he told his servants all about it.
He told his servants all about it. Yep.
And he paid off Abraham.
And then he did what?
Paid off Abraham.
That comes later, but he calls Abraham, right? Confronts him. He calls Abraham in and he confronts him. And what does Abraham say to Abimelech when Abimelech confronts him?
I thought you'd kill me because she's so beautiful.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say, She is my sister. So we would call this, he is trying to justify himself, right? He's trying to justify his sinful behavior. It's sinful. And yet he's trying to justify, reason through, tell Abimelech, well, yeah, but this, I'm trying to tell you why I did what I did. I'm trying to justify myself. Do we ever do that? You ever do something sinful, wicked, ungodly, and then when you're caught, try to justify why you did it, why you had to do it or something like that? Yeah, I think so. We're more like Abraham than we want to be sometimes, right?
Abraham had flaws.
Yes.
And God has pointed out right in this
That's right.
lesson.
That's right. Points it right out to him.
And we have flaws, face it.
Yeah, we make mistakes,
and
absolutely.
work hard to correct them.
Absolutely. We call that repentance, right?
Brother James,
Yes.
I'm wanting to read verse 12.
Okay.
But indeed, she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. So maybe he is justifying himself. Sarah's the daughter of his father, but not the daughter of my mother.
Yeah. So she's technically his half-sister, right?
Okay.
And so he says that. He says, well, she really is my sister. Now this gets us to the conversation that we were just having a moment ago. Can you lie with the truth?
Yes.
Sure you can. If your intention is to deceive, you can use the truth to lie. Abraham is trying to do that here. He's using the truth. The truth is, they are siblings. But she's also his wife, right? And he's lying, right? So he's using the truth to deceive. Anytime we use anything to deceive. What's that?
Half-truth.
Yeah, you could call it a half-truth, little white lie, whatever you want. It's still a lie. He's still being deceptive. He's not being honest, right? He didn't say, oh yeah, she's my half-sister and we're married. Right? He didn't say that. He said she's my sister and she said he's my brother. And the intent of it is to lie. The intent is to deceive and get away with something.
And his purpose
Because they
was.
had pre-planned it.
They had pre-planned it. Yeah, absolutely. And she goes along with it. She goes along with it. Now,
Would she have any trouble?
who is Abraham putting in danger?
Sarah?
Sarah.
He's putting Sarah in danger, absolutely.
He's putting himself in danger.
Maybe, if they find out, they could be angry with him, and
He's putting Abimelech and all of them in danger.
he's putting a whole lot of people, a whole nation of people here, however big this king's realm is. God said to Abimelech, I'm going to wipe you and everybody else out if you don't give her back. What's that?
He did it to protect himself.
He did it to protect himself.
Himself, yeah.
Very selfish, right? So Abraham, again, at this point in his life, is all about himself. He doesn't even care about his wife. And he doesn't even care about the promised child, does he? The child that he so has wanted. He's willing to put that at risk too, isn't he?
How long do you think this was between the time that Abimelech took Sarah and God came to him?
I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody can give you a timeline on that, but it would appear that it couldn't be too long.
Well, it says that they had stopped the women from being able to have kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So it had to be a period.
that they would know that,
Yeah.
right? And when you first read this, I'm just thinking, oh, he takes her that night, God comes to him, and it's. But if
They
you
don't
read
do
further,
Yeah, probably not that
must have
night.
been some time
Yeah.
A couple of months at least.
Yeah, probably
for them to
something.
realize
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember also, you know, this idea of his harem or many wives and all that stuff. Yeah, there's probably also, you know, culturally there would have been a period of time of purification, you know, maybe dolling her up and all that, pampering her and getting her ready to meet the king, you know, that kind of thing. So during this period of time, something's going on. I don't know. I don't think it was years, but it had to be a certain period of time. I think what everybody says here, there had to be some period of time where Abimelech and the rest of the people recognize, hey, we're not having babies anymore. Something's wrong. Something's going on. Because that's part of it.
She's 90 years old, isn't she?
Yeah, she's around that age, yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when I read that, when I think of, you know, all he had available, and
Yeah.
I guess she was a real.
She was a real looker. She was beautiful. The Bible says she was beautiful.
Before, I think.
She was beautiful. What did you say?
She was that age while this was taking place.
Yeah, she's an old lady. An older woman.
Don't you think this would have been a scary time for Sarah, not knowing what was going to happen to her?
Probably.
Because, you know,
This
after
whole
all,
thing
she was in this harem, in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, she was definitely part of the harem,
Yeah,
part of
see,
the
so
yeah.
she knew not what was coming next.
I think you're right.
It would
That's
have been a
scary.
time for her.
Go ahead,
The
Gail.
whole thing with Abraham and Sarah, though, was a miracle. I mean, God was in all of this.
Oh, yes.
He could make anything happen.
That's right.
And it wouldn't have to be 2 months or whatever. I mean, he could make it happen right then.
Oh yeah, but the idea that they couldn't have babies would have been.
But did they know that?
They do know that.
I think so, because that's what he was trying when he went to Abraham, for Abraham to, that was how they were
That they
healed.
bear children.
And I think
Yeah.
he brought all that stuff so that Abraham would bless them and they could be healed.
Yes. Yeah. So they do recognize. Again, how long? I don't know. We could probably argue for days and days, but it would have been a period of time. Probably not years, but a period of time, anyways.
I'm having trouble understanding why Abraham is explaining things to Amalek. After all, he was a prophet, etc. Why did he owe Abimelech any explanation?
Well, Abimelech is the king, and he asks him.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
a king.
Oh yeah. Abimelech is the king of the Philistines, this land that he's in, and he brings him in, and he's lied to the king.
Because he's afraid of Abimelech.
He's
the
definitely
beautiful
afraid.
wife, it's why he's made the lie. That's why he lied in the first place.
Yeah, he's afraid of people.
He's
Absolutely.
afraid that he would choose his wife.
That's right.
Which
Absolutely.
evidently, in that day and time, he could do.
How does the story end? Verses 14 through 18. How does it end?
Well, Abraham got richer because of all of that.
That's right.
Doesn't make sense, but.
Doesn't make sense.
The
So,
same thing happened in Egypt when he died.
that's right.
And when he walked away with so much more.
What was God's promise to Abraham? I will bless you. I will make of you a great nation. Those who bless you, I'll bless them. Those who curse you, I will curse. And out of you, all families of the earth will be blessed. Remember, this goes back to the idea that it was an unconditional covenant. So God is blessing him even though he's lied. He's lied and cheated and, direction and all of that kind of stuff. God is still...
And his beautiful wife is restored to him.
That's right. Absolutely. So she is restored, and Abimelech's family, they're all healed. Everything's good at the end of that. And interesting that Abimelech, offers up all this loot, to prove she's pure, take her away, that kind of thing. And then, of course, Abraham prays for Abimelech. Things are taken care of.
God to bless those that are opposed to him. God blesses all the world all the time, and many people are opposed to him.
Well, that's true. Absolutely. Of course, this is a different kind of blessing that we would see here. But God is blessing Abraham in spite of Abraham. Right?
If he had only known, he didn't have to go to fraud
Yeah.
to protect himself, because God was going to protect him.
Yeah. Had God protected him in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's wavering. He's forgetting.
But as we were turning pages back in 12, remember Abraham was fearful, and he wants to make things help. He wants to. There are times when he thinks, well, I don't know if God will carry me through this. I might as well step in.
The big theme is fear. We see that over and over again, and it says fear. And fear is a motivating factor. Why did Lot go up into the wilderness with his daughters? Fear. Why did Abraham originally lie when he was down in Egypt? Fear. Why did they do what they did with Hagar? Fear. There's fear. Fear is a motivating factor. It's something we need to be cautious of as well, because fear can drive us to do.
I see impatience in that too, that he doesn't have the patience to wait on God.
Yeah, in this one, definitely fear. I don't see the impatience, but there are those moments where it's an impatience.
Well, you mentioned
Definitely.
Hagar, and that
Yes.
one instance.
That's right. There's a fear that's there as well as an impatience, not wanting to wait on God. Of course, I don't know that we'd be any different, because this is years, right? Years that God had said you'll have a child, and they still don't have one. Go ahead.
In verse 13, does this sound like Abraham is blaming God for that? It says, and when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother. It almost sounds like he's blaming God for making him wander around in the wilderness like that, or wander around like Adam and Eve.
Yeah, I see the connection you're trying to make there. I'm not sure.
At least this version, it makes it sound that way.
Yeah, it says, and when God called me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, maybe it doesn't seem real clear though. I'm not sure. I don't see it as clear as that. Maybe some of you could see that.
I mean, to me, I'm thinking he's saying, when God called me to go from where I was
Yeah.
to come,
Yeah.
that we made this agreement
Right.
to keep us safe.
Yeah.
That she would do.
I kind of look at it in that way too, like a time marker. Like at the time when I left, I told her to do this kind of thing. I'm not sure. To me, it doesn't read that way, but I understand what you're saying, and I see the connection you're trying to make there. I'm just not sure. It almost sounds to me like what Janice is saying, like a time marker. When we left our land, we had an agreement that we did. But good to keep an eye out for these kind of things, these themes and whatever. Just test them, check them, reread the text, go over them again. Nothing wrong with trying to see, hey, does this match up with something else? Because we've seen that before, haven't we? A number of times we've seen a number of themes or repeated stories or events or something like that, cyclical events happening. So not a problem to try to connect the dots. Just be cautious and kind of reread the text over and over again. But I see where you're going. I don't think so. I think it's a time marker. Abraham says to Abimelech that he didn't think anyone in that place feared God. It was verse 11, right? So who fears God more, Abraham or Abimelech?
Good.
Interesting, huh? The one who fears God more is actually Abimelech. Abraham is not. Why doesn't God just scrap his plan to work through Abraham and use someone else?
Because, yeah,
He already made the promise.
he keeps his promises.
He keeps his promise. That's it. That's right. That's why, right? He said to Abraham, if you'll leave your land, and Abraham did. Remember, he didn't say if you just make sure you never tell a lie, I'll bless you. He said, if you leave your land.
See, I see it like Gail. When you say it like that, when God
Yeah.
says you leave your land, then he's saying God caused me to leave my land. God's the one that told me. Because my verse
Yes.
says God caused me to wander.
Yes.
And it's
Mine
not-
says that too, yeah.
Not that it's God's fault, not like, but at the same time, yes, he's the one that came to me and said, I'll do this if you leave your land. That it sounds like he is blaming him because he's the one that said you should leave your land.
Could be. But again, I think it's more of a time marker.
I wouldn't have done this,
Yeah, again, I think it's more of a time marker, but again, that's all right. I mean, if you're making that connection, tough to argue convincingly, maybe one way or the other. Again, I think it's more time marker. But God never said if you don't tell lies, then I'll bless you. He just said, leave and I'm going to bless you. And Abraham leaves. So that's what's going on there. And God is going to be faithful to his promises. God is going to keep his promises. Let's look at a couple texts before we do this, and then we'll be done, because we're basically out of time. But let me just remind you, in Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 3, and verse 7, as well as chapter 13, 14 through 17, you have God promising Abraham a whole bunch of stuff without requiring anything of him other than leave your father's land, and which is what he did. God is always going to be faithful to do his word. Somebody, who wants to read? I need two people. We'll read two pieces of scripture and then we'll be done. Gail, can you read Numbers chapter 23, 19? I need one more.
What do you got?
2 Timothy 2, 11 through 13. So Gail is Numbers 23, 19.
God is not human that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill?
2 Timothy 2, 11 through 13.
Here is a trustworthy saying. If we died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we disown him, he will also disown us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself.
Okay, now that text, the part we want to focus on is just the concept of God is always faithful. If you're faithless, God will remain faithful. That doesn't mean, in that context is a covenant of the new covenant. And in the new covenant, are there requirements? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's not saying you can abandon and just do whatever you want and God will be faithful to you to save you. What it's saying is God's character, God's nature is always to be faithful to anything he's ever promised. If he's in a covenant with you, he will hold to that covenant, whatever the requirements on your part or his part are, he will always be faithful. He cannot not be faithful. He's always going to be faithful. So God had promised to Abraham, you will be blessed. And God is continuously being faithful. The good, even in spite of Abraham's lying, deception, and he does it over and over. You ever sin the same sin again? Like, do it again, right? So don't be too hard on Abraham, because we do the same kinds of things, right? But God is going to be faithful to Abraham even in the midst of his failures when they come over and over again, because God had promised. Now the good news for us is God is faithful. God is faithful. You can count on him. Whatever God promised you and me and us, he will stand by it. He said, if you remain in Christ, you're going to have eternal life. That's good news. We know God is not going to lie.
At the same time, he promises, though, if you don't, this will be your fate.
Yes, very similar to the blessing and cursing of Israel. Different because Abraham had those unconditional kind of aspects. We have conditions. But the point is, God will never let you down. He will always be faithful to what he has said. So that's good news for us. Anybody get the last thought, last word?
Kind of seems like every time Abraham tried to help, he got himself in trouble.
Yes, every time he tried to help God out. That's a great lesson.
That's a problem.
Stop trying to help God out. And we can do the same. Stop trying to help him out. He can take care of it, okay? Let's do that. And tomorrow we'll try to help him out again anyways.